Welcome to Action Energy Market Global podcast. My name is Tarja Teppo. I'm the founder of Action Energy Finance. In this video podcast, we interview people that work with clean transition. We highlight solutions and stories behind them and explore project financing options utilized. Okay, and today we got to the podcast studio Peder Broms from Cloover. And he's the co-CEO, CFO of Cloover. And as a first question, let's first discuss about your personal path, but about the name Cloover, because I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Am I doing a good job with the name?
You're doing a great job. It's good to be here, Tarja.
Alrighty. What's behind the name? You know, is it still...
The real story?
Tell the real story.
Cloover in Swedish Clover was a play on merging the green aspects of clover, like and money. It's a slang term for money too. Okay. However, we couldn't register clover as the English term because obviously it was already taken. So we added an O, and the name kind of stuck. We like it a lot. And now we're trying to figure out what the official reason should be for the name.
It's a good story. I mean, that has a story in it already. But why don't we start with sort of your personal path? How did you end up becoming one of the co-founders of Cloover? Is it what brings you to energy sustainability financing crossroads? What's the story?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I actually got started in energy and natural resources in one of my first jobs. I was working in Switzerland at a trading company. We were trading in mainly energy commodities and credit. And I stayed focused on credit for most of my career after that. I was both on the borrowing side, but particularly on the lender side, and also on the trading side of credit. And at some point, I was in Stockholm looking at participating in various energy credit syndicated loans for European installers that were using all kind of smart ways to finance their renewables rollouts in the continental Europe. And I thought that was quite interesting. And I saw how many clever ways they came up with financing, particularly B2B customers, like selling electricity behind the meter, sharing of energy savings, PPAs. And I wondered why we couldn't have something like that for the consumer market, because at the time in Sweden, you only had consumer loans, sort of high yield consumer loans or mortgages available to you if you wanted to finance a solar PV plant or a battery.
Right.
And given the kind of increased costs or rather the increased scope of these energy assets, costs for consumers are starting to come up to the 200, 300,000 of SEK, so the 20, 30, 40K euros. They seem to me like there would be an opportunity if you could sort of standardize the smart mechanisms that were already being used in project finance, roll it out for the consumer market. And if you did that, we could start targeting the people for whom this really matters. So let's say the 90% of European households who have not yet transitioned to renewable energy production at home, who are the mass market, and for whom 100, 150 euros cheaper energy bills or net extra every month is a real deal. So you could, there's a social element to this too, which is how do we get the last huge market onto the renewables train too.
Sort of the last mile of the renewable energy, one could say. Almost.
Yeah, and it's a big mile, right? We're talking 90% of households still, so on average in Europe. So it's a big challenge, but also a huge opportunity for Cloover if we can make it right.
Okay, so that creates a good bridge to you already started explaining a little bit what it is what Cloover does. How long have you been around? I mean, you described the path, what brought you into co-founding Cloover, but when did this actually happen?
So we got started on the idea in 2022, early 22, and from the start we realized that we needed to build something together with the existing players in the market, meaning the installers or the vendors of renewable energy tech. So the idea of creating a B2B2C model was quite obvious from the start. What we learned quite quickly is that it doesn't matter how nice of a spreadsheet you've designed in order to explain how this is a great deal for both consumers and installers. There's a go-to-market path that you need to follow too. And we realized quickly that in addition to providing sort of embedded financing or end customer financing through Cloover, we needed a tech layer, we needed a way to access these end customers, and we needed a way to facilitate providing these services to the installers. So during late 22, early 23, the initial founding team was formed together with with my two Swiss co-founders who were working on a very similar idea, but from a continental European and from a tech perspective. So together we launched Cloover in its current form in 2023 in the Swedish market.
Okay, so you're currently operating in the Swedish market, or have you already branched out to other markets as well, or is the focus is now on the Swedish consumers?
No, last year after having grown the Swedish market, we branched out into Germany, Netherlands, and Switzerland too. Okay. The focus for the team is to be able to cover in due time all of Europe.
All right, super. So if we go back to the operating model at Cloover, you already mentioned the installers, so it's a B2B2C model. So so from the installer perspective, so what is it actually what you cover? It's heat pumps, it's solar. Is it something else? I mean, installers in what areas?
So we cover financing of renewable energy hardware. And in theory, we're not against anything as long as it's green and saves our customers money at the end. We have focused initially on solar with related energy storage and let's say the related EV chargers of that and heat pumps. Going forward, let's see where the demand is, but for now, this is keeping us busy.
Okay. So from the installer perspective, say that if we have an installer listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, this sounds great. So how does it actually look from their perspective? What's the step of a new installer taking Cloover into use?
So from a new installer's perspective, what we offer them is to integrate into their existing sales process and for them to offer end customer financing in their existing offering. They can either use our platform to generate offers and some of the other software tools that we enable them with, or we integrate directly into whatever tools they're using today. Okay. So from their perspective, it's a matter of signing up on the website. And yes, we do have some installers that have actually started sending out offers without us initially onboarding them in person. But most of the times we spend time with them, educating them, training their sales staff, and teaching them how to best use the tools.
Okay, but is the tool or the platform that's mainly used by the installers, or that's also used by the households, the end consumers? That because I guess in the end, the embedded financing or the package of, say that if somebody takes the heat pump with the embedded financing from Cloover into use, so is that end consumer also going through the platform, or that happens separately through the installer?
Think of it a bit like a Klarna for renewable energy. So main usage is the installers that generate offers or integrate our financing offers into their existing customer offering. Of course, there is a customer-facing element to the platform too, which is when the customer checks out, what type of financing solution do we offer this customer, and they go through our onboarding and underwriting process. So you have two users of the platform, so to speak, but the initial start is with the installer.
Okay, very good. So when it comes to the so it's heat pumps, solar, or solar with batteries. What was the third that you mentioned?
EV chargers.
EV charging, right?
Yeah.
So is that so that comes from the end customer perspective? That's an integrated offering. So is that all debt finance, or is that sort of is it a combination of equity and debt, or it's pure debt finance?
What we offer the end customers is in Sweden, for instance, we have 3 products that we're live with. We offer a subscription service, which is similar to an operating lease, where Cloover owns the assets and the customer uses it for the determined period of time. We also have an installment purchase model where the customer pays off the asset over a shorter period of time, similar to a buy now, pay later, but for bigger tickets. And we also offer loans through a partner bank in Sweden, which is a straightforward loan product. And depending a bit on the customer profile, one of the 3 options is best suited for them. It's also here where we are a bit different from other market participants, because we are able to offer through one contract with an installer access to all these 3 financing options for their end customers, and we are also able to help the customer decide which product is ultimately best for them, which is why it makes it a lot simpler to work with someone like Cloover, where we do all the heavy lifting in the background and just make sure that we can convert as many as possible of the installer leads into sales.
Yeah. That sounds really good. Now, I mean, as you mentioned, you rolled this out end of 22, beginning of 23 in Sweden and in other markets. So 2 questions. What's been the biggest surprise or sort of surprise element? I mean, has it all gone like smooth sailing and
of course,
no worries? Or what has surprised? I mean, you worked with as you mentioned, energy debt for a long time, but now when you came down to the B2B2C space, has there been any surprise in or what has surprised you, whether in the growth rate or the
First of all, the operating environment we're in, especially going pan-European, you notice how frequently both kind of regulation around energy changes and also the subsidies that are related to consumer purchases, how often they change and the impact it has on the various, both the financing models that are most attractive, but also the general demand of the public. I think I echo a lot of sort of more seasoned renewable energy entrepreneurs when I say this, but the biggest challenge for many out there is the uncertainty around subsidy application. Example in Sweden around energy storage is a good example of that. But you really see how the demand shifts with that.
Totally agree. But is that, I mean, good that you brought that up. I mean, so you, as part of you could say the turnkey or the financing package, so you also sort of bring in sort of the possible grant financing, available subsidies in the country for the consumers and deployments. Okay. So that's
for sure. I mean, from our perspective, it's about getting the best possible deal for the end customer, because ultimately, if we're faced with the risk on the customer, the better deal for them, the better credit they become for us. So we do help, and we try to optimize for maximizing of subsidies for the end customers in all the markets we're in.
Okay. So that's actually sort of, that's a really interesting concepts. And so now a question on sort of like, now when you've sort of taken in different markets consumers through this, you help the consumer, you help the installer. What sort of where do you see most often that say that the consumer sort of, so to say, drops the fork? What is sort of where or if there's anything that's most tedious from the consumer perspective? Is it basically something with the installation itself, or is it something with that they need to get some sort of for the subsidies, basically some papers together or whatever it is? Is there some point that is like, you could say, sort of a roadblock, or are there any? Is it just sort of smooth sailing all through? Or
I mean, plenty of roadblocks. I mean, there's still 90% of households that remain sort of that hasn't really made the switch yet. I think what we saw in sort of 22, also parts of 23, was massive supply chain blockages and long waiting times. That is kind of coupled with the fact that this is a fairly young industry that's grown very quickly. So service providers like us hasn't really emerged to help deal with supply chain inefficiencies and bottlenecks. I think one good example is end customers having to prepay 20-30% of an installation value and then wait 6 months until the installation is completed. That's a lot of cash. I mean, if we're talking installations that cost the same as a car today, then asking consumers to sort of front the working capital of the whole industry is a bit rough.
Yeah.
I think the other point I'd like to say is that where a lot of consumers miss out on this journey is because they simply don't know that they're able to get it, that there are alternative means of financing this other than your mortgage, for instance.
So you mean like in general the visibility, that they don't even know that the option is out there?
I mean, if you don't have 25-30K sitting in cash on your bank account, I mean, many consumers wouldn't dream of even looking at this as a way to lower their energy spend with 150 euros per month.
Right.
So the knowledge that there are other options out there, I think players like NPAL or the other solar subscription players have done a good job in educating the market about that. But there's certainly many markets where consumers are simply unaware that this is an option for them.
Okay. The sort of continuation question on that, you described that you do 3 different models: subscription, installments, or a loan. So what bucket do the consumers, what's the sort of the main bucket where the consumers fall into? Are they mainly going for the subscription, that they basically say that I don't want to own it myself, I'm sort of happy buying it as a service? Or is there sort of that they actually want to sort of pay it as installments and want to own the device, whatever it is, in the end? Or do you see, or is it just this is sort of even division, or is there something that is, you really notice that that it's the subscription that drive the markets?
I think it depends on the market, and we have the 3 options available because we noticed that we can attract a different type of consumer. Indeed, subscriptions are more targeted to those that want a worry-free package attached to it, and that don't want to take out additional loans or credits in order to get access and use of a renewable energy hardware. The installment product is interesting because it allows for shorter tenor duration payments. So it's particularly popular among slightly older customers, or indeed customers that would like to pay this off in a foreseeable future, say 2, 3, 4 years. For installments, you can also offer the installers the opportunity to assume a portion of the fees, so the interest costs, so that it becomes really truly attractive for the end customer. And loans is a very good product for this. Actually, it's the only product where you can have, for instance, risk-based pricing and full flexibility on terms and tenor, which should cater to a larger audience. It's just that it hasn't really been marketed and around for very long in Europe to support the energy transition with dedicated financings for this. If you look at the
Yeah.
US, that market has moved almost entirely into a loan market with large players now specifically focusing on solar financing as their core business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we think loans are going to come in Europe too. And we also see it as a very good product to differentiate between different buckets of risk or tenors.
That's very true. The now, as you described, you're operating in Sweden and Germany, Switzerland, and especially if you compare Sweden and Germany, electricity prices, there's a huge difference. Do you see sort of like, being based in Finland and, having lived in Germany, and even before the current sort of, energy price hike, the sort of the impact of the way people look at sort of their energy costs was way heavier in Germany. And do you see this also in sort of in your business that's differences between, say, the Swedish consumers and German consumers in sort of in the interest or willingness to sort of like start implementing projects and take sort of the embedded financing into use?
Yeah.
Are there? Yeah.
So the ultimate, yes, you're right. The energy price spikes following the invasion of Ukraine certainly brought energy prices and gas prices to the consumer mind and to the table, to the family table, for a good reason. I think it kind of highlighted the fact that also energy costs are subject both to inflation and quite severe volatility.
Yeah.
We do see interest in all the markets we're active in, and we're planning on going into even more markets in Europe where energy prices are somewhat different, because we see that the returns that consumers are able to generate with solar plus battery, or in the solar plus battery plus an electric heat pump is better than what they would pay on a monthly basis for the same services provided by the grid. But that indeed the price spike was what ignited it. I think the drivers in, for instance, Sweden, where their energy prices have been quite low during 2023, has been the opportunity to participate in grid balancing, in the grid balancing market, even for consumers. So there are new opportunities arising for sort of decentralized energy assets too, also in countries where prices are quite low.
Right. All right. Let's take as a concluding question that if you look at sort of, say that there's other entrepreneurs listening to the podcast who are also looking at, how to deploy their solution, how to bring financing options into it. What would you say sort of the biggest sort of lessons learned, or something you wish you would have known when you started Cloover and started sort of thinking, how do we bring consumers or businesses the financing option for their energy solution?
Yeah, specifically in energy, it's a huge market. It's a big percentage of GDP that we're tackling. If you're in renewables, and especially in the type of renewables that we're at, you're up against a fairly established conglomerate of either oil and gas or infrastructure investments that are partly or fully government subsidized. So it's an industry that is entrenched, and where we're working so hard to find solutions and alternatives that are better for the end customer. And that's going to be a tough journey at points. I think what we've learned is that it pays off to be fairly focused on your specific niche in that big industry, not try to do too many things at the same time, and find a way to really bring value, not just to the end customer, but also to the target markets that you have, in this case, for us, for the installers. So if we've realized that we first have to create a product that the installers want to use and benefit from, and then use that product to reach the end customers and bring them a better product too.
Yeah.
So
So if you
work
make,
with the fragmented
yeah,
industry
yeah,
and try to make each other stronger. I think that's
yeah,
the way we can win this, because yeah, momentum is on our side, but
mm,
still a long way to go.
yeah, yeah. So if I sort of conclude from that, if you make the installer happy using your platform, and if you bring the installer more business, that's going to bring you more business, right? So is that the right sort of
Yeah,
conclusion from that?
I think ultimately, if you have a product that's good for the end customer, that's
Mm,
great. Find a way to make it good for the installer as well,
yeah,
and that way you can solve you can sort of start driving volume and start seeing more business coming your way. But you have to solve for the idea that this is a fragmented supply chain. It's a fragmented market still. You need to
yeah.
create solutions that work across all the participants in the value chain if you want to stick.
Okay. Well, that was definitely a good tip, and sort of lesson learned. So thank you, Peder, and best of luck for growing Cloover's business and expanding into further countries in the European market. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening. To follow future episodes, subscribe to our newsletter at www.actionenergymarket.com and select Action Energy Market Global Service. We publish new episodes on Fridays. If you are a technology provider or developer in the energy or clean infrastructure area, add your solution to our solution bank.